values moved in one way or another? Have they
I mean, I would say that
at all?
my personal values probably haven't shifted very much, but my political values have shifted libertarian. I mean, so I used to be a proponent of criminalization of marijuana. I'm no longer. I've been in favor of
what
decriminalization
changed
of pot.
that for you?
A couple of things. One was just a general sense the government sucks at everything. And the more I see the government try to crack down on things, the more prevalent it becomes. I mean, people were dealing pot on my 6th grade, 7th grade playground in public school. So obviously, like, that was
to LA.
Yeah, exactly. And then
That's terrible.
Just a general perception, not only that the government sucks at everything, but that you got to own your own actions, and also examining more of the evidence about the impact of pot on people's lives. And you know, again, there's you ruining your own life through use of drugs, and then there's drugs that legitimately ruin other people's lives. Right? There are drugs that remove your ability to even reason or think. I think there are only 2 reasons to criminalize drugs in any fashion. One is if there are drugs like, for example, PCP that legitimately make you violent, and then you are going out and committing acts of violence against people. Then there's a case. Or if you're talking about a drug where it legitimately robs you of your capacity to reason. If it were heroin, if you were able to actually crack down on it successfully. But even there, I'm not sure that the proper government solution is criminalization, because we've criminalized it and it's still incredibly prevalent. So
I agree with you. I agree with you on that. And I agree with you in terms of drugs being extremely detrimental. And the other part is that there's comparable drugs that are legal. Like, and comparable drugs, meaning not even really comparable, drugs that are far more devastating, like alcohol. Like, you could just go to any grocery store and buy a jug of whiskey and kill yourself with it.
Yep.
So it's not difficult. You just drink the whole thing
and we have laws on
the
books already that prevent externalities.
Yeah.
If you drive high, it's the same as driving drunk.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that you need additional laws to do that. And also, you know, I'm not opposed to zoning laws. Like, I don't think a pot shop should open up right next to my house, right? They're residential zoning. That's fine.
Same with liquor stores, though.
Right. I don't want a liquor store right next to my house. This is correct.
Yeah.
Right. So I've become libertarian in some ways on that sort of stuff. The same thing is true, by the way, when it comes to the issue of same-sex marriage. So on a personal moral level, I'm opposed to same-sex marriage. I'm an Orthodox Jew, and I believe that a man and a woman were made for each other. When it comes to government involvement, I don't think that's anybody's business. I think a lot of things. I think adultery is bad, too. I don't think the government ought to be involved in adultery. I'm so strict, I don't think premarital sex is a good thing, right? I've been very vocal about this. I was a virgin until I was married. My wife was a virgin until she was married. I think that's a good thing. Do I think the government has anything to do with any of those things? No, I don't. I don't think it's any of the government's business. It's consensual activity. There are no externalities. So what exactly is the government getting involved in? And when the government gets involved in stuff, then there are externalities, right? Once the government starts to cram down its vision on people, then you start to get unintended externalities. So, for example, with the legalization, my view on marriage is that the government should get completely out of the business. I don't think the government should be involved in straight marriage. I don't think it should be involved in gay marriage. I think the government should be out.
I agree 100%.
And the reason that I say that is because as a religious person, right, who believes in traditional marriage, I have two marriage certificates. I have the one from the state that I don't give 2 craps about. It's buried somewhere in my garage. And then I have my religious marriage certificate, which meant, among other things, that I got to shut up my wife, right? I mean, like, this was the one that mattered to me. And I think that's true for most religious people. The religious ceremony matters a lot more than the state saying a thing. And the state isn't incentivizing marriage. People aren't getting married because they're like, yeah, I need the tax break.
Right.
So that's a bunch of nonsense. And once the government decides what version of marriage it wants to push, that then comes into conflict with other values. So, for example, once the state of California decides that same-sex marriage is on legal par with heterosexual marriage, now I'm worried about the externality of I have a religious day school, or I have my synagogue. My synagogue is a religious institution. It doesn't approve of same-sex marriage. Now is the government going to come in and tell my synagogue how it ought to act with regard to same-sex marriage? I don't think that's the government's business. So how about this? How about everybody gets to do basically what they want, associate with whom they want, and it's none of the government's business? This seems like a pretty good, happy medium.
I'm so glad you talked about the 2 things that I wanted to talk to you about that I'm sure we disagree about. One of them being marijuana and the other one being gay people marrying each other. So let's start with the marijuana one. Do you think marijuana ruins people's lives? Is that one of your contentions?
I think that it can, and I think in the same way
alcohol can. Have you ever had
any
experience with marijuana?
No, I'm just talking about the statistical overuse of marijuana among teenagers does have detrimental brain effects that have some long-term after effects.
It's pretty proven, and that's one of the things that I'm glad you said that, because I wanted to cover that, but you were in the middle of a rant when we were joking around about 6th and 7th graders selling pot. Don't smoke pot when you're young. You really should. It's not good for the development of your brain. Same thing with drinking. You know, I didn't smoke a lot of pot when I was a kid. I did it a handful of times until I was 30 years old. But I did drink a bunch of times when I was young and in high school. And it's terrible for brain development.
Right.
Especially before you're 25 and your frontal cortex hasn't even fully formed. Your frontal lobe is like this. It's a developing thing. And there was an article recently that I posted from BBC that was saying that you probably shouldn't be considered an adult until you're 30.
Right. They're saying brain development doesn't even stop until you're 26 or 28. This is why when people are saying let's lower the voting age to 16, I'm like, what the
fuck are you talking about?
What in the world?
When I was 16, I was a chimp. You know, I mean, really, I was a chimp in a high school. Now, when the problem that I have with many people's perceptions on marijuana is that it's based on ignorance, meaning no personal experience with it. You know, and
listen, I'll admit I have no personal experience with marijuana, so
I know you don't.
I'm not speaking.
You probably
from
should
experience.
get high. That's what I'm trying to say.
Man, I've seen the effects on stock prices when people get high in the studio.
Oh, they jump up, man. They jump down for a little when a bunch of chickens jump off the boat, but then they come right back up. The marijuana thing is, in my opinion, it's another one of those things where people have this categorized box that they like to put marijuana users in. Like, this is the category: lazy, stoner, stupid, delusional.
It's too widespread for that. I mean, there are people I know who are doctors who use marijuana. So,
well, there's the jiu-jitsu community is a big one. There's a giant percentage of the jiu-jitsu community that does jiu-jitsu high. They have competitions.
Sounds like more of a party.
It's not, man. I'm telling you, because it's not what people think it is. If you've never smoked marijuana, this is going to be a very difficult thing to grasp. But marijuana enhances jiu-jitsu because it eliminates the rest of the world. When you're rolling, which rolling is like, say, if you and Jamie were going to have a sparring match, that would be rolling. Like, you'd slap hands and then you'd go and you're trying to choke him and he's trying to get you in an arm bar and you're going after it. When you do that on marijuana, it's like you don't think of anything else other than those movements, and it becomes like this very intense meditation in violence. Like, it's not violent in terms of, most of the time you don't really even get hurt. It's like you get to the point. Like, one of the beautiful things about jiu-jitsu is you can grab a hold of someone and choke them to the point where they're going to go to sleep, and you would kill them if you kept going, and they tap and then you're friends again and everybody's cool, and you try to do it to me and I try to do it to you, and you really can do it reasonably hard without people getting hurt. And it happens every day all throughout the world. A lot of these people are high and they're doing this jiu-jitsu practice in this almost like trends. It's like it's a transcendent state.
If you can function when you're using marijuana, I don't care.
But you can. This is what I'm saying. The perceptions are off.
So, I mean, I would assume there's a small subset of the population for whom that's not true, right? Who are overusing marijuana.
Yes.
And
that's probably the majority, in fact.
Okay, so then, you know, but again,
I would say
that's not a case
the same way with food.
I agree. So I don't think there's anything we disagree about here, because I'm not talking about criminalizing marijuana use. Right. I think that we should honestly discuss the evidence that for a subset of the population, there is some evidence that marijuana is addicting, but it's a subset. It's not everybody who's on marijuana. The vast majority of people on marijuana are not addicted to marijuana. I think in the same way, alcohol. I mean, it's true of alcohol as well.
There's people that are going to be addicted to almost anything, and I think there's absolutely people that are addicted to sugar. There's for sure people that are addicted to nicotine and alcohol and all these things that we let people have.
The material addictiveness of marijuana is not comparable to opioids, though, for example.
It's not even comparable to alcohol or nicotine. It seems to be very rare when people become physically addicted to it. Extremely rare. And what's common, though, is abuse. And it's common in everything that human beings consume. Abuse is common, as we said, with food. It's certainly common with alcohol. It's certainly common with pills.
But this is why, you know, I really believe that the way to solve some of these problems is a social fabric problem. Like, it's a parenting problem. It's a social fabric problem. It's a personal choice problem.
Yes.
And that's why virtually every solution I suggest is so funny. You know, conservatives like me who are libertarian leaning are constantly accused of being non-compassionate. No, it's just our compassionate solutions don't involve the use of government.
Yeah.
It's like we're going to encourage people to make better decisions with their lives. And if you choose not to do that, it's a free country.
Well, you know, coming from a religious background, you have this community that reinforces this kind of behavior and thought. And I think that's one of the really one of the best benefits of religion is that moral fabric and that community, the sense of community. Even silly ones like Mormons. You know, they're the nicest folks, right? They believe something that is fucking patently insane. If you go and read the Joseph Smith text from 1820 when he was 14 years old, the shit that he wrote, like,
I try not to get into doctrinal insanity. I wear a funny hat all day.
I hear you. Well, I was going to get to that.
Yeah, but you know, with that said, I mean, Alexis de Tocqueville talks about this, you know, early on in the American Republic. The idea is that what makes America very different is the idea you don't need a big government when you do have a supportive social fabric where people feel like they're at least oriented toward a common goal. It's one of the problems that I think we have in the country right now. I'm not sure people are oriented toward even a common sense of conversation. Right? I mean, you don't have to agree on everything in order to have a common sense of the important values that unify the country, or should.
Yes.
I mean, I always use Sam Harris as sort of my bête noire here because he's obviously a militant atheist. I'm an equally strong believer. And yet when it comes to the things that we would like to see happen in the country, not on a government policy level, but on a let's have a conversation level and discuss on evidence level, we're on the same page. There are certain core assumptions you have to make in order for that to happen. You know, my argument about America and the West is that those core assumptions are built on Judeo-Christian foundations. Sam's core argument seems to be that they're built on evolutionary biology. We differ a little bit there.